Yeah, dude, what the fuck?
Where I've got this shit is all chopped and screwed. Okay, so yeah, I listened to our episode from last year and I was like, fuck. So I got like a current age and I got all kinds of random shit. But I think I'm ready to stream it back. I really focus in on the 2 or 3 things I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
I think it'll be cool. It'll be fun.
And here we are. Welcome back to Rough Draft Research. I'm here with the gurus, Daniel Darther and Christian G. Love. We got a special episode for you today. Man, this is what we live for right here.
Yeah.
Running back longevity. It's time. It's stuff like this you need to watch this for your startups, ladies and gentlemen, because we are giving you all the inside tips and tricks from the Rough Draft Research facility.
It's a
Headquarters. So
decentralized campus.
so that's it. The running back longevity episode, highly anticipated. So let's just get right into it and kick it over to the RB guru, Christian.
Yeah, so as we all know, running back is definitely one of my favorite positions, and it's really easy to be too late on when a guy is going to stop being good, and it's really difficult to figure out how to get out early. And so that's kind of the whole key of this episode and this rundown I've done. So what I did was I went over the last 10 years and I took the top 24 RBs and I just averaged everything about them, basically their heights and weights, the how many years they were in, how many years they were in the top 24, how many they didn't. Just anything you could think of, got it all on a spreadsheet, averaged it out. And we just wanted to see if there are trends that you can try to follow. Obviously, this isn't going to be foolproof. How can it be? You're never going to know. Somebody's going to get hurt. Somebody could be the next best thing and then never show up. It's how it happens. But if you can find trends that you can try to follow and at least give yourself a plan, you can be one step above everyone else who's learning on the fly.
Yeah.
So...
And that's how you win leagues.
Exactly. You gotta be ahead of everybody. And so what I did, I thought there's 3 major categories to running back longevity. Age is the obvious one, the amount of carries, and then just injury and injury proneness. So we're gonna knock it in those 3 categories. So we're gonna start with the age one. And I think it's obvious we got to start here. The top 24 guys, the average age of people in the top 24 over the last 10 years is 24.4 years old. So, they're a little out of that rookie phase. You miss a lot of those early rookie years. They're right in the middle of their prime and right before they start getting old. And the average fallout age of running backs over the last 10 years is 26.9, which we had always said 27 was the age. Last year, that was what we came up with.
Yep.
And we only did 5 years of data, did 10 years, got 26.9. Pretty nail on the head. 27 is when people start dropping. So that's an age that you want to be aware of. So that being said, let's talk about some guys that are about to turn 27 before the season starts.
Oh,
I think it only makes sense.
I don't think... Shut it off now if you guys don't want to hear this.
I'm not ready for it.
Skip ahead because this is going to hurt.
All right, so the first one we got on my list here, Leonard Fournette is going to turn 27 by the time the season starts, or is already 27. How are we feeling about old Lenny? We kind of already talked about him. We got to spend the time. I feel like he'll be good with Brady, but he's on the way out, right?
It hurts, man.
They did draft a running back. Rashad White. I think they see it too.
Yeah.
It's so hard to tell, man. It definitely feels like he could have a magical half a season.
It just depends, man. I mean, it's being on the second leading scoring offense and being the red zone guy. it warrants itself to keeping it alive. But yeah, as soon as Tom Brady's gone, it's got to be deuces, right?
Yeah, I would think so. And I mean, he's had so much success with Brady. You would think he'd almost do like a Gronk and just peace out when Brady pieces out or whatever. Like, oh, I'm not going to play with anybody else now.
Right.
That guy.
Uh-oh.
So yeah, he's 27, huh?
Yeah.
Oof.
This
Yeah.
next guy, it's a Christian favorite, huh?
Yeah, old James Conner, who we definitely owe an apology after last year's
We?
episode. Or I do. Yeah, I definitely owe him an apology. Last year's episode, I trashed him a bit, and he just did what he did every other time, and he proved me wrong, and he had a hell of a season. But he will be 27. How are we feeling on James Conner still in Arizona?
I'm for it. I am for it, man. I mean, I don't know. I kind of talked about it last year, and I've definitely missed out on the opportunity to buy him when he was affordable. But Kenyon Drake was up there getting close to double-digit touchdowns in the system in Arizona. And then James Conner came in and got 18 all-purpose TDs. I don't think he repeats that, but I think
Yeah.
he's a lock for double digits. I don't think he'll be the 5th RB again, but I
Yeah.
do think top 12 is not out of the question.
Not at all. And he'll definitely be top 24 barring an injury. I agree with you. It's time for me to just, eat crow on that whole situation. He's just better than I thought he was. So
Hey, when you win some, you lose some.
Hey, well, if Christian's touting him, sell him now, boys.
that's fair.
Oh, man.
Another guy, though, turning 27, my boy Aaron Jones right here on the cereal box. Turning 27. I can kind of take this one as the resident Packer fan. I guess I'll start. I feel pretty good about Aaron Jones this year. Really good about Aaron Jones this year, actually. I think he's going to open up the receiving game a little bit more with Adams being gone. They're going to kind of move that around a little bit and spread it out more. And I think he's going to lose carries to A.J. Dillon for sure. But I think he'll be more prevalent in this receiving game. However, I do see a scenario where he's gone at the end of this year, and I don't know what happens with Aaron Jones after Green Bay.
Ugh, I think it's going to be just fine. I don't know why. I like the
Okay.
guy. His usage has been light enough and diverse enough that I think
Yeah.
there's a need for a running back like him in at least 10 running back rooms in the NFL. So if he's got to move, I don't think it's going to be amazing. Obviously, he had something nice coming in, a 5th-round draft pick, and developed and just kind of that was just nice. It's just a great crescendo of a
transition
career.
for him.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
to move on, it's going to be something. But he's, I think he's used to putting in the work and earning his keep.
Yeah,
Oh,
definitely.
yeah, 100%.
Definitely the most disrespected
Yes,
draft
always.
pick in the fantasy world. He's almost
Dude,
like the
insane.
Brandon Cooks of running backs. It's like,
Yeah.
When are
Yeah.
you gonna
Crazy,
just?
dude.
When are
We
you gonna
called
stop
it last
doubting?
year, man. Which
Yeah.
you said that that Austin Eckler would be like the Aaron Jones of the draft last year, and he definitely people still don't trust him. So that's funny.
Yeah,
Right.
100%. And on your note about usage, he has 10 less career carries than Jonathan Taylor, and he's been in the league since 2017.
That's
so that
production,
just
baby.
puts you. So yeah, he's just highly efficient. So yeah, if there's a guy who can kind of get into that older age group, Aaron Jones is definitely a possibility because of his usage. It's just sitting right there in the middle with guys like Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, and Joe Mixon, right in there. But it's not terrible.
Yeah.
No?
I don't want to
Talk
skip
about it.
too much around, so I'll let you go. But I'm going to come back to Aaron Jones when you mention one of these
Okay.
guys later on.
Perfect. Well, talk about not a ton of usage to a whole hell of a ton of usage. And Ezekiel Elliott also turns 27 this year. Man, the more I do this, the more I just have to respect Ezekiel Elliott. My first fun fact of the episode that I couldn't find another place to put it in. Did you guys know Ezekiel Elliott's only missed one game due to injury in his entire NFL career? Just producing. He's only been outside of the top 10 and the top 24 once, and that was 12th. Like, My man just produces. I still don't. I'm not his biggest
man
fan,
now.
but like, oh well, okay, whatever.
Hey, this is business.
man.
This is business. Strictly business.
Apology
No.
accepted on behalf of Easy E.
I'll still never claim to love the guy or be his biggest fan, but I have to respect production, you know. But it's going to end at some point, I know, but I don't know. I think he's going to be the first guy. I did this over the last 10 years. Nobody has more than 6. And if he makes the top 24 this year, which I think he will, he'll be at 7, which will be impressive. It'll also be all 7 years of his career. So pretty impressive.
Yeah, maybe he'll have his first RB2 season. Nah. I'm not scared
Probably
of him.
not. So next guy up then, Chris Carson fell out due to injury. Unfortunately, I think we've seen the end of Chris Carson. It was a hell of a ride.
Yeah.
But I just think he's out.
You lose 100% of the fab you don't spend.
Hey,
Got your back.
I appreciate you.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, and if Penny's healthy and, second RB off the board, yeah, pretty much no room for Carson.
Hey,
He killed it, though, man. He
hey,
crushed it.
they love him up
Yeah.
there. So if there's an opportunity, I think he will get an opportunity. Just unfortunately, it just feels like the door is closed on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hell of a run though. He did pretty well. You can't take anything away from him.
Not a ton of 7th round guys out playing 1st round guys,
No, not at all. Hell of a career. So another interesting name that came up, Kareem Hunt. I don't know if he's gonna end up getting traded. I'm still on that kind of train for sure. But what are you guys feeling with Hunt? He turning 27 in August.
Starting to feel like a flat earther, man. Like I'm going to be the only idiot that still thinks Kareem Hunt's about to get traded because I don't understand why he's still in Cleveland. They got everything they need without him. Seems like they could get something out of him. He's asking for a new contract, right?
Yeah,
It's time.
it doesn't.
Yep.
It's got to be done. I think the only logical thing, and it's not that logical, is that they're waiting until somebody gets hurt to drive up his value. But I don't know. Just trade him. You can't afford him. What's the point?
Well, especially if you give the whole farm for a quarterback that's probably not going to play this year, you're probably going to want to just settle down and get some assets, right? Like it just kind of makes more sense to wait until, they lose that 3rd game. And then it's kind of like, hey, the block is hot.
I guess it depends on if they're trying to compete because they're going to need Kareem Hunt if they don't have Deshaun Watson playing.
True.
So, dynamic offensive player.
That's fair. Speaking of dynamic players, Dalvin Cook also turning 27 this year. Cook is a very interesting one. High injuries, high carries, but nothing too crazy high necessarily. But he is right outside the top 5 in carries at 6 of active NFL players right now, and he's missed 21 games due to injury. So he's got some red flags. What are we feeling?
He's in it to win it, baby. He's going to the top. Do I have something bad to say about anybody? I never know. I go back to the 6 touchdowns last year. I mean, he's got room to improve. This is a pass-first offense now, so it takes a little bit of the wear and tear off of him, maybe. And I don't know. Speak about his injuries, isn't that kind of?
That's the thing is it's shoulder. It's shoulder, and I think that's why we kind of see. This is me projecting here. Tinfoil hatting, yes. I think that's why you don't see the touchdowns. He doesn't run as hard, but he's really good at avoiding tackles, man. But when you have that shoulder injury, you don't forget. So we'll see if this can be a pass first offense and not. I mean, literally, how many times has this been a three down running hard nosed grind team? It's not that anymore. So maybe if we expand the box a little bit, use him in the slot, maybe.
You and your cooks in the slot, dude.
I'm slotting up Cooks, baby.
That's funny. Yeah, I think
He's good in space, man.
I think he's got another 2 years of production.
Oh, for sure. I'm with you. He's definitely one of those that will go past it. It's just scary with him with the injuries, but you can't really prepare for injuries, so you shouldn't like over stress about it, I guess. But definitely avoid the prone guys. But he's really not had a long injury in a while, right?
No.
Yeah.
Now, if you're asking me if I want to build a cornerstone, of my roster with Dalvin Cook,
No.
then no, not really, right?
Yeah.
So
100%.
I'll try to think about it like that.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. Everyone would love to have Dalvin Cook on their roster, but you don't want him as your one guy right now in a dynasty league for sure.
Hey, but if you're a win now team, man, and someone's scared, looking to sell,
Do it.
Go for it. He's on the trade block over there, it sounds like.
Wait, did I say it out loud? What's up? Hey, what's up for the Belt League?
Block it up.
All right, next name up, Alvin Kamara. So, with the suspension obviously looming, all that stuff going on, but he's still not had too many carries, man. 912 in the NFL, 382 in college, including his community collage days.
Shout out Hutchinson.
You read a brochure. I don't know.
So that brought him up to 1294, which is under Aaron Jones, under Joe Mixon, under Philip Lindsay. If you include Philip Lindsay's college,
damn,
pretty crazy. And so he's still got time on his legs. I mean, this also doesn't include receiving, which Kamara does a whole hell of a lot. So that's got a lot to do with it. But I still see Kamara, as long as he gets out of the suspension and everything, doing pretty well for a few more years, especially supplementing with the pass game.
Yep.
Yeah, he was a name I wanted to bring up when you mentioned Zeke, how he had the 7 top 24. Like, it had this suspension not been looming, I think we'd be seeing someone surpassing 7.
Well, Kamara is actually he broke his off. He had 4 in a row, and then last season he didn't make it due to injury. So his ended. He was kind of. I have a roundup of guys that have done it their whole career. Is kind of a good segue if we want to fit that in real quick.
Hey, you're
so
the
right
guru,
now,
baby.
There's 10 of the active guys that have not missed a top 24. Javonte and Najee Harris, obvious rookies. Antonio Gibson, Swift, Jonathan Taylor, James Robinson. Pretty cool. David Montgomery and Josh Jacobs still going strong. Nick Chubb and then Zeke Elliott. Those are the only guys that have made it every year of their career right now. And obviously, predominantly, 6 of those guys are year 1 or 2. So just a little interesting tidbit.
Love it.
I think Kamara's all the way golden, man. Damn it. Sorry, I traded him in the offseason, guys. I'm love struck.
Well, all right. So the last guy here, there's 2 more. Derrick Henry is the next guy up, and obviously he got hurt. Didn't look the same necessarily in the playoffs last year. How are we feeling on old Derrick Henry right now?
I'm cold.
Yeah?
I'm cold on Derrick Henry. Yeah, I think that he'll probably have a great year just because he's the only thing that team has going for them.
Mm-hmm.
This team is in a transitional period, and therefore they're going to put the ball in his hand like they have his whole career. But I don't think he's going to be able to keep it up too much longer. He had to have lost some momentum with the injury last year.
Yeah.
Hassan Haskins in the house, Mm-hmm. Not saying that that's like, he's not like knocking on the door to tell, Henry to get the fuck out. But if someone had to step in and, become the new star, it feels like that guy's already on the team. It's not Darrington Evans or whatever.
No, I agree. And the thing about Henry, man, like his dangerousness is like how fast he is for how big he is. I mean, that and a bunch of other stuff. But if he loses any of that speed due to this injury, it kind of limits what he can do, no?
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
yeah.
like I was saying, if he doesn't have the momentum, and that's the speed and the
Yeah.
mass.
Yeah, there we go.
So if you lose the speed and you just have the mass, I mean, it might be hard to take him down. He might still be a red zone weapon, but his whole
Yeah.
thing was just open field speed, like you're saying.
Hmm.
Be able to outrun a guy and also truck anything in his way.
Yeah.
If he loses any of that power, any of the completeness of his game, then he's going to start getting picked off.
Yeah.
Or, no,
100%.
not throwing interceptions, but you know what I mean. They'll take him out.
I would probably take advantage of like the first big Derrick Henry game to trade him and let everyone think he's 100% back. And I think he will have a great year, but you could get a haul for him if he comes out and has 160 yards and 3 touchdowns in week 1 and you just trade him. But
Oh yeah.
And a
That-
smart roster construction, he could be a value at where he's going in startups right now. If
that's
you
true too.
if you can plug him in and build a roster in a way to where you have a future contingency,
Hmm.
then he could help you get on the ground. I don't
Yeah.
know, get on the sky,
On
whatever.
The sky.
All
Sky's
right,
the
and
limit.
The last name on here, Austin Eckler, ended as the RB2 last year, which was pretty impressive. Old Austin Eckler. I don't really see that trend necessarily going down anytime soon. I don't know if he'll be 2 or anything like that, but how are we feeling about Eckler?
I don't think he'll be 2. Personally, I think he'll still be a 1, but I don't see him as 2. He had just as many touchdowns as Jonathan Taylor, all-purpose last year.
Oh, yeah.
20.
Crazy.
Yeah, like that's not gonna happen again.
No.
They messed around, taking guys in the 6th round, 5th round, whatever, kind of playing games, and they caught a falling value in Isaiah Spiller in the draft. And I think the plan is to make Austin Eckler a long-term asset and not a 20 touchdown a year kind of guy that's falling to pieces next year after
Yeah.
the same kind of workload he saw previously. So I don't know. I think they scale it back, and obviously that's going to impact his fantasy finish. And I would bet, my left shoe that he does not hit 20 touchdowns again ever.
Yeah, I would be willing to help on that bet. I was gonna say take you, but that's not right. I would also make that bet.
You
do
would
the right
you would invest. You're
Yeah.
investing in the bet.
Yeah.
Your right shoe, my left shoe. Bring it.
Well, yeah, those are the notable names, the older guys, the 27 club, if you will.
They're
But
on the cusp.
let's talk about some of those guys who quit young.
Yeah, I'm just going to give a little history lesson. So, we talk about that age, right about 27 is where people start to drop off historically since 2012. Got some good info out there about it just now. So I'm kind of looking through since 2012, who didn't make it to that age? And I'm only looking at guys who had multiple top 24 RB seasons with at least one season as an RB1, and they didn't skip 2 consecutive years in the top 24. So guys that really had a good push and just couldn't hold it. I want to look at the names. I want to look at the situations and see if we can see that kind of stuff coming up, because longevity is definitely about age, injury, and usage, but it's also about keeping an eye on the rear view. You can see something coming for you. You can get out of the way before it takes you down. That didn't work out for all these guys. So before I get into them, I have to give a shout out to Doug Martin, who he didn't make this list because he had 2 consecutive years outside the top 24, but he had 2 years where he played 16 games, and in those 2 years, he was a top 3 RB. He was a top 6 RB. So Gotta have respect. You got to look out for the injuries, though. Mm-hmm. So let's get into these guys. I'm starting at the 24-year-olds, the guys who dropped off after age 24. I'm going to start with Jordan Howard. So he was a 5th-round pick. You know, we all know Jordan Howard. But he had 3 years being a top guy. And going into his contract year, something crazy happened. They signed Mike Davis, and they drafted David Montgomery because Matt Nagy was a second-year head coach, and he wanted a back that fit his system more so than what Jordan Howard did. So this is just an example of going into a contract year, a rookie year, and not wanting to pay a running back. And if a coach can find a reason to, reinvest in a value or a youth or change the style of the team, that's what happened to Jordan Howard. So look out for those guys. And in their rookie year, they might have started hot, but not everyone gets picked up, for a long-term extension. And to get to age 27, you got to play through your second contract as a primary back. That didn't really happen with Jordan Howard. He went to Philadelphia, and we all know how that went.
Sorry. Cough, Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there's a couple like these. I'm saying all this because it's reoccurring situations that you kind of have to look out for. So yeah, that was mostly coaching staff driven. But anyway, the next guy on my list that peaked after his 24-year-old season was Duke Johnson. So he was more of a pass catcher. He had 74 catches, and that gave him an RB1 season. And it was he's having a good time, a couple RB2 seasons in there, but he was headed into a contract year, and he was sharing the backfield with Isaiah Crowell, who was doing most of the running. Duke Johnson was more of a dynamic pass catcher. Going into the contract year, they said, hey, why have two guys when we can kind of cut bait on both you guys, both in contracts, and go with Nick Chubb? Yeah. So then, Duke Johnson pretty much disappears. He's replaced by a younger guy. So another contract year you got to look out for.
A lot of coaching changes on that team as well.
Yeah, quite a bit of coaching changes. But, a team that didn't have a lot of coaching changes in the Marvin Lewis days was the Bengals. And another situation, you guys are going to see it coming time and time again, contract year. Jeremy Hill comes out, second round draft pick, and he kicked ass, man. He was RB1 as a rookie, and then he had 2 RB2 seasons. It shared the backfield with Giovanni Bernard, who was doing the pass catching while Jeremy Hill was doing all of the hard running. And it was great. But then he went into a contract year, and they grabbed Joe Mixon. He said, this dude can catch the passes, Gio, and he can do everything on the ground, Jeremy. So we're wrapping it all up, and we're going that direction. And it worked out. All of this, you see this time and time again. David Montgomery, Nick Chubb, Joe Mixon, this is working out for these teams. They're packaging kind of what they needed a committee for into one single player. And it's awesome. But it's not always a contract. You know what I mean? Eddie Lacy. He also peaked at age 24. And there was no injury. There was no new competition. He just fell off. James Stark was on the team, and he'd been a long-running vet, and he just had to play football because Eddie Lacy, got a little heavy on the field, and didn't really work out for him. Yeah, and that is funny because he's the only person on this list that's 250 or higher. Yeah. And it's like, okay, it worked. It just didn't work for very long because I don't know if it's sustainable to keep kind of like what we were talking about with Henry, that speed and power up when you're that big. Yeah, it can't be easy. Obviously, it doesn't work. So, okay, Well, there was no real explanation there, but this next one has a clear explanation. And now we're into the 25-year-olds who dropped off. I'm going with Todd Gurley. So, yeah. Todd Gurley, we all know him. We all love him, right? Played lights out. He finishes the fourth year of his rookie deal. He had 21 touchdowns. There was 19 touchdowns in his third year. He was doing amazing things. He was the running back one for all those years, right? Maybe Lev Bell was in there, maybe Melvin Gordon, but those guys were the men to get it done. And what he did that none of those other guys were able to do was get a big money contract. So he gets the big money, goes into his fifth year, scores 14 touchdowns. But, you know, there was like, what's going on with Todd Gurley's knees? There was a bunch of weird stuff, and they drafted Darrell Henderson. And then basically they decided that they didn't want to pay Todd Gurley all that money because he wasn't making the team that much better. The next year they draft Cam Akers, and all of a sudden, you know, they cut Todd Gurley. He ends up in Atlanta pretty much doing nothing. So it is what it is. I mean, and looking in that, I kind of tracked a little bit of the money, and the last Super Bowl winning team that had a lead running back that made more than $2.5 million a year was in 2006, Willie Parker for the Steelers. So basically, if you want to win the Super Bowl, you can't have money in the running back room. So that was kind of crazy. So it got me looking a little bit at like the top 5 teams with money in the RB room. And it's kind of a weird list. It's the Seahawks, the Dolphins, which I don't understand.
What?
Yeah, like who the fuck? They got like 50 guys that all make $1 million, so it's $50 million. But the Vikings, the Titans, and then number 1 is the Cowboys. So
you think the Vikings got a shot?
I'm saying none of these guys are going to win the Super Bowl historically by paying their running backs. That's what the numbers say.
All right.
Just I didn't want to put Cole to rest, water on your fire. But all right, so now we're at age 26. We got Latavius Murray. He had pretty good years with the Raiders. They didn't re-sign him after 4 years. And then they went with Marshawn Lynch, went with a vet, you know, did what they had to do to win. Didn't really work out, but that's all good, you know. That last year he had 12 touchdowns and about 800 yards. So the year before that he had 1,000 yards and then 6 touchdowns. So he was productive, but I guess they wanted something a little more. And it didn't work out. So let's see.
Sad days.
I know. I don't know. It is depressing. I'm like, these guys couldn't hack it past age 27. Whatever.
Relatable.
Yeah.
So relatable.
All right. My last guy, and then I'm done, is Alfred Morris. And he was going into a contract year, and Washington picked up a draft pick, Matt Jones. He picked him up in the 3rd. And this was just simple, you know. Morris had been getting 265 carries or more, you know, 7 touchdowns or more. And then they drafted a guy and kind of made it a committee, and his workload went down, and so did his success. And that was the first year Chris Thompson really took over as a pass catcher in that offense.
Oh, yeah.
And then it was just a down year for rushing in Washington. The human cup of ranch dressing, Kirk Cousins himself, scored 5 of the 9 rushing touchdowns that season.
Jesus.
So that was just it for Alfred Morris. So those are guys in a couple of situations of the ones that didn't make it through to the average.
Oh, yeah, baby.
Well, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Let's talk about guys who made it past that point, but then retired. Because we're talking about retirement. Because ultimately, in a dynasty league, if it works out, you could have these guys for their whole career. And you know, we always thought, or at least I always thought, 30 was the age you need to start looking to drop off your running backs. over the last 10 years, these top 24 guys, the average age of retirement was 29.4. So almost a full year earlier than what we'd been thinking. And so I just thought that was fairly interesting. And in the name of an episode where we're trying to get out ahead of everybody, knowing that, oh, it's actually 29, not 30. So let's get out at 28 and a half. That type stuff is what we're going for here. So some notable names around the age of 30. We've got Melvin Gordon coming up. He'll turn 29 at least this year. J.D. McKissick. Cordero Patterson's already over it at 31, and David Johnson is also 30. So how are we feeling about any of those guys? Anyone you're looking for to maybe still kind of use in a startup, or no?
No.
No.
Are you kidding me, dude? David Johnson? Maybe.
I mean, Cordero Patterson will live forever, but I don't know how long his production will be sustained.
I don't know. I don't get it. I don't get it with the J.D. McKissick stuff. I mean, I understand 2 years ago, the guy was like the leading targeted running back or whatever. But now there's 3 viable options.
Yeah, there's no way.
And they actually have wide receivers now? Like, they didn't have wide receivers 2 years ago.
Yeah,
So-
they had to feed it to him. Yeah, J.D. McKissick is definitely on the way out. It was a cool run, though, you know?
Oh,
He got
yeah.
to be on this list. We've talked about him probably more than any other podcast. I would be willing to bet.
Oh, also,
yeah.
How pissed is he, man? He's like, I could have won a Super Bowl, but y'all had to re-sign me. God damn
What
it.
the fuck?
That was his choice, man. That was a bad call. Maybe he went up to Buffalo and was like, this place is whack. I'm going back to Washington, D.C. Yeah.
Yeah. He's
All
like,
right.
I like a good table, and I don't like all these broken ones around here.
Yeah. Can I find 25 five-star restaurants within a mile of my apartment? It's like, no. Not in Buffalo, man. You got to go back to D.C. High class.
Yeah, he didn't want to play outside. I get it.
Who does? Not me.
All right.
Jeez. All right. Real quick, just 2 more stats, and then we're gonna go over to Dan with some old geezer achievers. But I did want to throw up the average number of seasons before a running back retired is 8, which makes sense with the 29 age, 22 coming in, 23 coming in. Makes a lot of sense. And the average number of top 24 seasons was 2.1. So that's another thing I want to stress in this episode is be willing to like let go of guys, because it's very often that they're not getting an Elliott or a Kamara or even a Gurley for those 4 or 5 years. Like getting that is rare. So be able to pivot. But there are some guys that like to just say, fuck your age limits and I'm going to do what I want. And so we can talk about those guys.
Okay. Yeah, pure and simple. There are several guys I have here that make my little criteria, multiple years, no 2 consecutive, at least a couple RB1s that made it past the 29. And I'll give you the highlights. We're already still talking about a few of these guys as if they're still playing football today. David Johnson, Mark Ingram's on that list as well. So these guys are still alive and well. AP, he made it up there to 29. So, but some of the guys that made it even deeper, Matt Forte, Frank Gore, Fred Jackson. I know that the career carries really weigh on these guys. So my curiosity was, hey, maybe there's a chance that some of that pass work helped these guys have a longer career. So I dove a little bit more into that side of things for the guys that made it on the 29 plus section.
Yeah.
And so I'll get into it because a lot of these guys are pass catchers. They're known for catching the ball, right? LaShawn McCoy, David Johnson. So these are guys that had a ratio. I'm calling it a ratio. The number of runs they had per catch, right? So the higher the number, the fewer catches they had per rush. So if you look at all these guys, and I'll just read them off. David Johnson, LaShawn McCoy, you got DeMarco Murray, Mark Ingram, Adrian Peterson, Darren Sproles, Danny Whitehead were all 29. And then 31 was Matt Forte, 33 is Fred Jackson, and then Frank Gore, 34. And so their average number of rushes per catch was 4.9.
Okay.
And the guys that we think of as past catchers that had longer careers possibly because of it, probably Darren Sproles. He was at 1.3. So basically 50-50, not really
that's
50-50,
crazy.
but yeah. So you compare that to Adrian Peterson, who had like 10.5 carries per catch.
Oh,
so
jeez.
he was just a pure runner. Some of these guys were just crazy. There's Frank Gore. He had 7.7. And so when you look at that, and then you look at more of a traditional pass catcher like Matt Forte, he's closer to 4.2. LaShawn McCoy in Philly alone was like a 4.7. And then after the Philly years, the Buffalo years and whatnot, he's closer to 4.5. And then Danny Woodhead, who, got a late start, it was more of a pass catcher anyway, he was at 1.7. So
Okay.
you can see David Johnson was at 3.6. He's the guy that has a lot of carries, but really did get it all done and through the air as well. So I'm just looking at basically you have a higher chance of having a longer career if you can diversify kind of that lower impact workload, be a successful running back in two separate ways instead of just being on the ground and getting grinded down. So the guys who make it longer are basically your pass catching kind of guys. So I'm looking at some of the guys you were just talking about being 27. And Alvin Kamara is at a 2.45. So he's quite a bit under that 4.9. Leonard Fournette actually is below a 4. So he's more of a pass catching guy than you might think. But then some of the guys where you think, oh, he's a dynamic pass catcher are actually over that number. Dalvin Cook's at a 5.6. Ezekiel Elliott's at a 5.7. So those guys really are getting most of their work on the ground, even though they can still catch passes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then I threw out a few guys that retired right at 27 or fell off this list right at 27 just for comparison. I've got Lamar Miller. He was at a 6.4, so mostly a rusher, didn't have a long career. And then just to throw it off, I put Devonta Freeman, who stopped being a high-level producer at age 27, but he had a 3.8, so still a pass catcher, but didn't get it done. So I am kind of targeting pass-catching running backs that are at the midpoint of their career, expecting them to have extra years over these averages that we're talking about is basically what I'm getting at.
No, and that makes a lot of sense. I wanted to ask you, where was Matt Forte and Aaron Jones at? Just out of curiosity. I don't know if I missed you saying if you have them. But
Matt Forte is at 4.25.
Okay.
And Aaron Jones is at 4.49, so 4.5.
Okay. Gotcha.
So those guys are under that average. And they really have a healthy ratio. And one thing I wanted to mention earlier, you were talking about Kareem Hunt and Aaron Jones, and their workload is actually pretty similar. So even though Kareem Hunt has missed like 2 halves of a season, Aaron Jones' workload is still that of a guy who's 1 season less in the league than him, as far as games played. So I do think he's fresh, man. Not much of a rind on that guy.
Yeah, it's going to help him out a lot for sure.
You just solidified my James Cook pick, baby. Let's go.
All right. Well, that's all I had to say. I was just kind of looking to see if you get more years out of a pass catching running back, and I think you do. Not always, but I think you do.
And just to piggyback off that, of the 63 guys that are retired, only 13 of them played for 10 or more years. And a few of them were the guys that you're talking about. Darren Sproles, LaShawn McCoy. I'd throw Jamar Charles on that list of pass catchers, Reggie Bush. and Matt Forte were on that list of 13 guys who played over 10 years. So it's a pretty strong showing out for those guys. And then some of those guys were like Gore and Peterson, where the league kind of changed a little bit. But yeah, pretty cool. The last thing about age that I wanted to bring up, does starting late matter? I was gonna see like, hey, if you get drafted at 23 or older, what does that do for your career? Do you pass that point and make it past 27 because you started late, or are you doomed because you're just starting a little bit later than everybody else? And that's pretty much what I found, because the average age of a career for someone drafted, average length of career for someone drafted at age 23 or older, 7.4 years. If they were 22 or younger when they got drafted, and that was 36 guys, there were 27 that were 23 or older. It was 8.3 was how long their careers lasted, the guys that were drafted 22 or younger. This is obviously out of the guys that who have retired. So yeah, being 23, you don't get more years. It actually ends up being less on average if you look at it. So I wanted to bring up some running backs who will be 23 or older to start their rookie year. We've got Rashad White down in Tampa Bay, Zamir White over in Vegas, Brian Robinson with the Commanders, and Pierre Strong up in New England. So does that scare you away from any of these guys at all?
No, I think as we do this, we're going to start seeing the age of success, average years of production go down, man. I think that we're kind of, you're going to still have a couple of Jonathan Taylors and whatnots, but it's so much of this has been, I'm sorry, and this is a bit of a tangent to the actual question, but so much of this success has been that 2017 class. You know, there's like 11 top producers in there, and they're all going into, 5+ years of success. And I think we start seeing more turnover, and for that reason, I'm more inclined to go younger, because I know at least they'll get the opportunity and not have to earn a role. They can be gifted a role via draft capital. So I'm not too scared of these guys.
Yeah, I'm not really either. I posed the question, but honestly, piggybacking off of what you were saying earlier, where you're watching guys get drafted and guys on contract years, and then they draft their replacement. And I made the joke about Josh Jacobs, but exactly that. Look at Zamir White. Okay, yeah, he's 23 years old, but he's about to take over most likely for Josh Jacobs, we think. So jump on that. Even if he only has a 4-year career, that gives you flexibility for 4 years where you have a guy who could be in the top 24 possibly. And so if you use it right, I don't think it's that big a deal. You just can't expect these 23-year-old guys to have super long careers. That's all. You just got to be ready to pivot early.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
but yeah. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to piggyback on that piggy's back with the Rashad White. We were just talking about how Leonard Fournette, after this year, what do we really think,
Yeah.
And so Rashad White kind of fills that void too.
Same thing.
Right. Yeah. If Tampa Bay has to do what we all anticipate, which is, kind of have to rebuild after Tom Brady, why keep Leonard Fournette around when you have a guy like Rashad White,
doesn't make any sense.
Back.
Well, not to mention Rashad White catches the ball really well. So
bang bang.
Truth be, he can get that old man ball catching status.
Hell yeah, dog.
Ooh, spicy.
He's going to 29, bros. You heard it here first.
All right, I'll clear the path. There you go, man. All you.
So we took down the first leg, the age leg. That's definitely the biggest leg, the most kind of numbers moving around. But our next leg that we need to tackle for longevity, running back carries. And so I took the average over the last 10 years of carries at retirement of the guys in the top 24. The average number was 1,737 carries. That was when people, that was the average number of retirement. So running backs who are pretty close to this number, Dalvin Cook has 1,705 career carries. Kareem Hunt, 1,554. Leonard Fournette, 1,559. Those were the guys kind of close, but not over. I just found that pretty interesting. Of the 63 retired players that I tracked, only 24 of them managed to get over that 1,737 mark. So I don't know if that means that this data just needs longer time to produce, or if that's just kind of when people start to run out. Because over those players averaged only 2.8 appearances over the last 10 years as well. So it was like the end of their career. It's like they could still get up there and do it, but this carry mark seemed to weigh them down. In fact, only 3 of the players that I tracked over the last 10 years, well, I didn't track it for 10 years, but read it. The only 3 of those players ended their careers, like their last season, they were in the top 24. Ray Rice, which is a little bit dubious because we don't know what would have happened if he had stayed in the league. So, but technically he did. DeMarco Murray ended his career in the top 24, as did Michael Turner, old Atlanta Falcons running back. If you remember 2012, the last date, that was his last season that he played. So only 3 of those guys. So again, what we're talking about, get out of these guys early. It sucks to move on from these guys, but like they're not going to do it for you. And then you're just going to have that name on your roster that you could have traded. 5 players made it to their penultimate season, second to last. We got Matt Forte, D'Angelo Williams, Maurice Jones-Drew, Todd Gurley, and then Ben Jarvis Green Ellis made it his second to last season. So again, so that's of these 63 guys, 24 of them went over 1,700 carries, and only 8 of them were in the top 24 in either their second to last or last season. I just think it's something to watch. You got to get out of these guys early. And so, yeah, I mean, 16 out of the top of the 24 players that went over 1,737 never even touched the top 24 in their final 2 seasons. So it's just an interesting number. It's not like a line in the sand, but I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
If I'd have to bring up anything, I need to put Dalvin Cook on the block before this episode posts. So I'll be doing that currently. So you guys take it away.
Man, I'm just wondering how much like Frank Gore and Adrian Peterson and LaShawn McCoy just like push that average way up.
Oh, it was mostly them, yeah.
I was saying you take that away and you take the superhuman element out of it.
Darren Sproles was another guy that boosted up. Darren Sproles actually had the most carries out of anybody, including his careers. It goes Darren Sproles, Frank Gore, Adrian Peterson, Steven Jackson, Matt Forte, LaShawn McCoy. All those guys are over 3,000 carries. Marshawn Lynch is sitting right there at 2,900. And then Frank Gore and Darren Sproles cracked that 4,000 mark.
Interesting. So, damn, man.
Yeah, they were definitely the driving force of the average, though.
I love it, man. I'm scared of the work, but it's like proven results. Like, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, and that's the thing. We're just trying to find the trend. So if that's a number, like, and it's more like if you can kind of. If you're sitting at a draft and you're thinking between, I don't know, say you're between Dalvin Cook and Aaron Jones, just for argument's sake, and you're like, oh, I really can't decide between these 2 guys, and then you remember that number 1737, you know what? Maybe I'll go Jones since I really can't decide. This is more what it's meant to help for, but I just thought it was an interesting kind of number, and then the finality of it seemed crazy. It was like once people got over that, it wasn't consistent enough after that. All right, so that's the first 2 pillars done. The age one's obviously the biggest one and the most interesting, but the carries one done. So the last pillar that we need to talk about, injuries. We hate them, and obviously they're the least predictable, so I don't have a ton of predicting stats for you, but there are some interesting things. Of these guys over the last 10 years, the average number of games missed due to injuries in their career, 13.8. So that's pretty interesting. Like not a terribly high number, but a significant one. No notable names who are still active that are already beyond this number. So Quan Barkley has 21 injury missed games. Christian McCaffrey is sitting at 18. Leonard Fournette is sitting at 15. I just thought that was pretty interesting. We kind of talk about them a lot already, though, so we're kind of on board with where they're at. But there's a few young guys who aren't 26, 27 years old yet, and they're already kind of getting close to that average. We got Joe Mixon, who's 25 years old. He's already missed 12 games, only 1.8 shy. Ronald Jones is only 24, and he's missed 10. And then Damien Harris is 25, and he's missed 9. So he's on that outer echelon. But so, yeah, injuries are the worst one. They're the hardest one to predict and the ones that'll screw you over the most. But maybe even knowing that 13.8, that's at least a way to know if a guy's injury prone or not, if he's already over that number.
Yeah, that's a good thing to keep an eye on, you know. You look at these younger guys that you mentioned, and like Rojo, sure. Yeah. Damien Harris, that's one you forget about because there's so much going on.
Yeah.
So, and then Joe Mixon, like, yeah, obviously he missed a lot of time last year, but I wouldn't have really thought he was that close to that threshold.
Right. Yeah, that was the most surprising name, I thought, for sure. It kind of scared me away from Mixon, I think. I've noticed myself not pulling the trigger as fast in mock drafts for Joe Mixon. And maybe I just got in my little head a little bit doing research for this episode. But
well, another thing for Mixon is, and I keep saying this, right? I keep going back to this, but he had 16 touchdowns last year. Like how likely is that? You know, his career high before that was 8 touchdowns in 2019. So what do we really think is going on with that? I don't know.
yeah.
But, you know, obviously he's on a high-powered offense, and I did some research about how that affects running back success, and it doesn't really correlate as much as you'd think. You know, the team scores more, so they're, it just didn't. It was kind of surprising.
Interesting.
High-powered offenses are they're more likely to support 2 top 24 backs.
Okay, but not really make them into the upper echelon.
No, I tried to trace like poor quarterback play and just like the number of carries versus catches and all kinds of stuff. There's just like the top running backs are just the guys that are good and the guys that score touchdowns. It does.
Yeah.
You can't really track it or predict it based off the rest of the team.
The beautiful simplicity of the running back position. You just grab the ball and run. Like, it really isn't affected by other than the offensive line.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. So, I mean, you're talking about injuries, and that's definitely a big deal. If we're doing this for the second year, so I'm gonna circle back and see kind of who didn't make it that was on the top 24 last year, and just a couple things to add a little support to the topics that we're discussing right now. So just a quick rundown of the 2021 season. I'll say of the top 6 running backs in PPR scoring, only one of them was a repeat, and that was Jonathan Taylor. And then one was a rookie, Najee Harris. The other 4 had RB1 seasons before and just had taken a year off. So it's kind of interesting to look at. But there were 12 players from last year's top 24 that didn't make the list this year. And I'm going to just go through them and look at the reasons why. And then you can kind of correlate it to some of the other things we're talking about. It's just real life telling you that Christian knows his shit. Pay attention. So I'll start off with James Robinson, who squeaked in at the number 24 spot. But I'm still calling that one a bit of a drop off, you know, as I remember previous conversations in the real time. But he had an injury that affected him. You have Kareem Hunt, injury, knocked him off the list. Chris Carson, injured, knocked off the list. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Miles Sanders, J.K. Dobbins, injury. So you got to look out for injuries. But the guys who just kind of aged out, as according to what we've already established, David Johnson, who's 30, wasn't on the list after being on there in 2020. J.D. McKissick, Kenyon Drake, and Mike Davis. Those guys all are 28 or older and fell off the list during that age season. And then you've got a few other guys that don't have as much reason. Oh, well, I guess they got some pretty big reasons. Ronald Jones didn't make it because Leonard Fournette was, the talk of the town. And then Naheem Hines, after having a pretty badass year with Phillip Rivers and whatever happened, he didn't make it, with Jonathan Taylor just being like, I own everything in Indianapolis as of right now and forever. So yeah, those are the 12 guys that didn't make it, and injuries were a big part of it. So kind of keep an eye on that kind of stuff. I don't know if you can predict some of these injuries. Probably not. Miles Sanders, Chris Carson, those guys maybe could have been a little weary of. But
yeah,
anyway.
for sure. And yeah, so 12, it may sound like a big number, but actually over the last 10 years, the average number of people that fell out each season was 10.6. So obviously you round up to 11. That's just one more guy over average. So what I thought would be fun and maybe insightful, let's see if we can kind of pick out of the top 24 in here that are gonna fall out, and let's round it down and pick 10, just because injuries are a little hard. Let's give our relay a little bit here, but of the guys in the top 24, and I can list the names if you would like me to, or we can kind of just look at the list and talk about it however you want. What are you guys thinking? Who's the first name dropping out to you, or do you want me to read them?
Oh, I'll just jump on in.
Okay.
I'm going to throw a little caveat out there and say, of the 12 guys that dropped out from 2020 into 2021, only 3 of them were RB1s. So 9 of them were RB2s. So I'm going to lean to the RB2 department.
Makes sense.
So I guess the first guy I'm going to throw out here is Darrell Williams.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. That's the easiest one.
Low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, I mean, right there with it, we gotta do Devin Singletary probably, right? Also on the way out, or is he on yours?
No.
James Cook's
We're gonna
down,
have some
baby.
overlap.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So, all right. I'm gonna throw one out. This may be a reach, but we're gonna have to reach on some of them. I think Josh Jacobs has a chance. And I only thought this because while you were talking about earlier when they drafted the replacement and on the guy's rookie year, or the rookie contract ending year, I started to notice, I'd have to go back and count, but a couple of them, that was also the year the veteran no longer made the top 24.
Mm-hmm.
So even ones that like they stayed on the team and split time, it like split them to the point where they didn't make the top 24 anymore. So are we looking at maybe a Josh Jacobs, Zamir White type situation?
Yeah, absolutely, man.
I mean, I traded Josh Jacobs, so I'm with you, Christian.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm still targeting Josh Jacobs. So
Okay, well we can leave him on, but we're gonna have to drop some good names here.
well, with that same thing in mind, I'm thinking Damien Harris gets the boot.
I could see that.
So
Yeah.
obviously that's a 3-headed monster, all competent backs, and an offense that has to go more towards the passing game with what they've done, and the second year of Mac Jones. So
Makes
He's an easy
sense.
cut.
I think an easy cut, Melvin Gordon. It's hard because he's been so impressive, underratedly so. But I do think Javonte Williams takes over, at least enough that it knocks Melvin Gordon down from 18 to like 27 or 28. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 3 more touchdowns than Javonte Williams, and if that goes the other way, then Melvin Gordon's not on this list, right?
Yeah, exactly. So what's that? Williams, Singletary, Gordon, Harris, Jacobs. So we've got 5. Got to cut 5 more.
Okay.
Do we do James Robinson because of Etienne?
Yeah, because he was probably not going to start the injury or start the year even playing from what I've read.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
we'll cut him. I know you want to cut the guy you've highlighted. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually James Robinson. So you nailed it. How about Cordero Patterson? Now this is an RB1 that I think.
Oof. He's 31 this season.
Yeah, but you look at Calvin Ridley not being on the team. You know, the underutilization of Kyle Pitts in the red zone. Matt Ryan gone, you know, all these things.
And he's the running back. He loves throwing to running backs. So do we know what Marcus Mariota is going to do? I could see it, man. I could see Cordero stumbling.
Well, plus you had Tyler Algier, and then you have 3 proven pass catchers in Brian Edwards and Drake London and Kyle Pitts. You know what I mean? And I just don't think, Cordero was amazing, but he was a product of the situation, and the situation has changed.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so we're at 7. AJ, did you have one?
Alvin Kamara?
Sure.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, unfortunate
Just missing
circumstances.
the games. Yeah, that makes sense.
It just seems like an obvious one that will kind of squirt out of that.
Asterisk,
Yeah. Are we going at another RB1 here? Is anybody worried about Gibson with Brian Robinson and
JD Smooches?
Ron Rivera talking about wanting to have that split backfield?
I'm not.
I see a world he squeaks into the RB2 territory, but I don't know about RB1.
Okay.
Yeah, but now, it's hard conversations.
Yeah. We got to cut 2 more.
2 more guys. Okay. Let me focus up. So the guys remaining, we got Joe Mixon, James Conner, Leonard Fournette, Jonathan Taylor, Austin Eckler, Najee Harris, David Montgomery. Now I know we've talked about riding him hard in a contract year, but there's also Khalil Herbert and a little bit like that Atlanta situation or the New England situation or whatever you want to call it. If they can get the passing game going, they have a rushing quarterback that's going to get some of that red zone action. I could see David Montgomery and enough of a committee slipping out.
I actually agree. I could see it going one way or the other, but for that alone, we got to pick 10 guys. So the fact that it could go the other way, yeah, I'm with you. I'm down for that. I would say that I think he will end up in the top 24. I really do. I think he's I think David Montgomery is going to have a good season, but I can absolutely see it going the other way. So, and I can honestly, I guess I'll throw out Leonard Fournette.
Okay.
That's right where I was at.
Yeah. It's same thing. Like, what if Rashad White just blows everybody away in camp and he just shows up and Tom Brady starts throwing him the ball all the time? Like, I don't know that it will happen, but we got to pick 10. So,
yep. Does that make it to 10 then?
Yes, because we would do James Robinson, Darrell Williams, Devin Singletary, David Montgomery, Melvin Gordon, Damien Harris, Josh Jacobs, Cordero Patterson, Leonard Fournette.
James
and
Robinson.
I missed one.
No, he said James.
I must have missed one, so we may have to pick one more.
How do we feel about...
Alvin Kamara.
Oh, Kamara.
Oh, Kamara. That was it. Yeah.
How do we feel about Ezekiel Elliott?
I don't think he falls out.
Mm-mm.
No.
He's going to not maybe out of the top 10, maybe, but he doesn't even do that.
He's just a guy I wish. Well, he was never worth the price.
Yeah.
He was never worth the price. There's nothing you can say. There's too much whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I doubt he'll fall out. I don't think he'll fall out of the top 24 at all, and I doubt he'll fall out of the top 12. I feel like he'll end as an RB1, maybe like 11, 12, but yeah, I've been converted. I think just you can't look at the numbers and deny it. Not like into liking him. I still probably won't draft him.
That was such a dismissive sigh. Like,
That's funny.
sorry. All right. Well, we're gonna have to write that down. We're gonna track it at the end of the year.
yep,
So-
love it.
To send you guys away, wrapping up on running back longevity, I wanted to give you 3 guys who I think, based on all the metrics we talked about today, make amazing candidates for a startup draft. And I'm going to start from worst and go to best, I think. And worst is a relative term, but I'm going to go A.J. Dillon here. Okay, a bit of a weirder one. He's 24 years old, which is a bit older than maybe you want as a startup guy, but he's 2 months younger than Najee Harris, which is pretty remarkable. He's only at 1,078 carries, so that's a little high, but it's not the highest ever, and most of that was from Boston College, 845 carries in Boston College, as opposed to 233 in the NFL. And again, he's only 130 carries above Najee Harris, and he actually has less NFL carries already than Najee Harris. So that's kind of interesting. And then this was the big one for Dillon, though. No injuries at all in the NFL. Hasn't missed a game in the NFL due to injury. He left 2 playoff games. One we lost, so we don't know if he would have come back the next week. And the other one, he ended up playing in the NFC Championship against Tampa Bay. He broke his leg in college freshman year, but other than that has been fairly healthy. And the reason I keep comparing him to Najee Harris is not because I think that he's going to be that level, but Najee Harris's ADP in dynasty startups is 1.4, whereas A.J. Dillon is 5.10.
Jesus.
So this is a guy, if you miss out on a younger guy, you could maybe snipe a Dillon. And like I said, I think Aaron Jones might be out of the way. I say that sounded harsh. I don't want him to leave, but I think he might be out of the way for A.J. Dillon. And A.J. Dillon could ride into his 25-year-old season as a starting running back with not that many carries and a pretty good injury resume.
That's solid, man. I mean, you can't go wrong with A.J. Dillon. It was just weird that he ended up in a second round draft capital with the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, that was strange. But it's been working out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess they know what they're doing. Probably should have taken a wide receiver there, but it's
Maybe.
good.
Yeah.
Clean the slate. Start
I'd
from
have to
scratch.
go watch and who got taken around there.
In the 2020 draft. Oh, I've got it all up here, but I won't.
Conversation for another time.
There you go.
All right. So my next guy, Deandre Swift, was another interesting name. He's only 23 years old, but he has 2 years of NFL experience, and he's still the second youngest player on my list. He's only at 705 career carries. Love the fact that he's under 1,000, and he's had 2 years of experience already, and it puts him just outside the bottom 5 in total carries of anybody on my list right now. He's at 6th for carries. Injuries are a little high for 2 seasons. He's missed 7 games already, so that's a little bit scary, but it's still manageable, and I like his workload. And yeah, he's maybe got kind of a slower start than people wanted, but he's just turning 23, not a ton of carries yet. I think the sky's the limit for Swift.
Yep, I wish you hadn't said that, but couldn't agree more. Yes, I mean, he was right up there 2 years ago with the McKissick and the target share, and there's just so much to like about Detroit building around him and having a more well-rounded team. I keep talking about well-rounded teams and how it's going to help the running backs out, and he's definitely right in line for that kind of a less attention equals more production situation. I think it's dynamic, and he's a badass, man. And I wouldn't draft him in a startup, though. I mean, fuck. You crazy? You crazy right now?
Hey, just to get back to that for a second, AJ, the receivers that went after AJ Dillon are Brian Edwards, Devin Duvernay,
baller,
KJ Osborne, Gabriel Davis,
Okay,
and Antonio Gandy Golden. And this is going into the 4th round, so I think they did all right.
I'm good with Dillon. Like
Yeah,
maybe
they did
Gabe
all right.
Davis, but Dillon's fine.
What Brian Edwards could have been if he just ended up outside of a Gruden offense.
That's fair.
Hey, Darnell
All right.
Mooney, that's it. All right.
Oh, that could have worked. Oh, okay. The last one, I'm not breaking any fucking ground here, I don't think, but it's fucking Javonte Williams because it has to be. He's 22 goddamn years old. He's the youngest running back on my list that's currently active. He has 569 total carries, including college, which puts him bottom 5 in production, and that's including his rookie season already. And injuries. 0 injuries. And I mean like 0. I went back and looked and I tried to find college injuries. I found one game in 2019 when he left with a leg injury and then he played the next week. So unless I'm just blind and missing something, this dude never gets hurt. He hasn't run the ball very often and he's 22 years old. This is the guy, if you want to follow the metrics of everything we've done today, this is the guy you almost have to get in a startup draft if you can do it.
Hell yeah. I hear he gets intravenous Fountain of Youth liquids and does a mummy wrap sarcophagus sleep once a week. So that's how he's staying so young and fresh. So you got to go after that. You know, a guy taking care of himself like that, got to get him.
100%.
Gotta get him.
He's on another level.
Well, cool. I guess I don't have 3. I didn't prepare for this, but I think I could throw together 3 sleepers that I like.
Okay.
And I won't have any stuff to back it up. But I think that you guys all are going to agree with a lot of these. Khalil Herbert comes up. Mm-hmm. He's only 24 years old. And then David Montgomery's entering the last year of his rookie deal. So that's a guy that we love the production. The college work was solid. And what we've seen in a limited sample size seems to be pretty solid at the NFL level. Let's see. Another guy I like is I kind of like Darrell Henderson. I feel like he could have a nice second version of his career or even be more of a 1-2 punch with Cam Akers coming off the Achilles, keeping him fresh. So he might be a guy who at that ADP is pretty solid. And I'm still going after Alvin Kamara, man. I think that everything we've discussed, his longevity is definitely solid, if not helped by a 6-game suspension. He goes into an offense that's going to need established playmakers. And I don't know, man. His draft capital in a startup is kind of criminal. Like you can get him in the 4th. And this is Dynasty, right? Like if you get a 4th round running back, he's going to help you going into the playoffs year 1 and I'd say at least 2 years as a no question starter.
Yeah.
You got to get that. There's nothing wrong 100%. With that.
Yeah.
So
I agree with all of you guys. And sorry, as a Vikings fan, I just want to throw out Alexander Mattinson, who is 24, has proven himself to be able to play that 3-down role. So, I don't know. I kind of like if you can get him super cheap, which maybe you can't because he's that handcuffed to Dalvin Cook, and we've already discussed injury prone. But, I don't know. We could see him playing with somebody and at least competing for a role at some point next year. I don't know. Maybe Atlanta.
There you go. I don't know if cheap's the right word to describe Alexander Mattinson. I think free would be a better word. But that's just one man's opinion.
Hey, I don't know. As a person who has Dalvin Cook and Alexander Madison, you're not getting him from me. So, ain't gonna be cheap, son.
What it do?
Well, I think.
Well,
does that wrap it up?
I think so. That's all I've got.
That's the longevity episode. We will not be playing an encore, folks. When we're gone, we're gone.
I love it.
Well, that's it.
That was awesome, guys. Let's wrap this up and keep around longevity. Let's get some rest. I got some mummy wraps.
All right.
Peace out.